Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. Today we're going to hear from the first of a group of civil servants from what used to be known as the Department for Communities and Local Government. Yes, Ms Malhotra.
Well, good morning, Mr Chairman. Good morning, members of the panel. Could I please call Miss McManus?
Good morning, Ms McManus. You're going to affirm, I think. Is that right?
I am, yes, thank you.
Well, the words are there on the screen. Would you read them out, please?
Thank you. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Please sit down and make yourself comfortable there.
Thank you.
All right, good. Yes, Ms Malhotra.
Good morning, Miss McManus. Can I start by thanking you for attending today to give evidence to the inquiry and for your insistence with our investigations? Just a few words by way of introduction, if I may. Could I invite you please to keep your voice up so that we can hear you clearly? It also helps not to nod or shake, but to say yes or no, because nods and shakes don't get picked up on the transcript. If any of my questions are unclear, please say so and I will happily rephrase the question. Lastly, if you feel you need a break at any time, please let us know. Is that all okay?
Yes, that's lovely, thank you.
I'm going to turn to your statements next. You've made two statements to the inquiry and these will appear in front of you on the screen. Could I please take you to them now? Your first witness statement, which is CLG 1309725. We can see on the right-hand side there it's dated the 18th of March 2019. If we go to page 30 of your first statement, we can see a signature there. Is that yours?
Yes, it is.
Could I take you to your second statement? That's CLG 3030739. And we can see, again on the right-hand side, that there is a date. It's dated the 26th of October 2020. Did you electronically sign this witness statement, which we can see on page 13?
Yes, I did.
Have you had an opportunity to read each of your statements recently?
Yes, I have, thank you.
Now, you have recently communicated to the inquiry a number of clarification matters to your statements. Is that right?
It is, yes.
We can deal with those if relevant during the course of my questioning today, but can you confirm to the best of your knowledge are the contents true?
Subject to that, yes.
Well, Ms McManus, the focus of my questions today will be on the following topics. Firstly, your background and role. Secondly, the role of the Resilience and Emergencies Division, your role and actions in the response to the Grenfell Tower fire, and any reflections that you may have to share with the inquiry. So turning first then please to your background and career history. Is it right that you have been a civil servant since 1984?
Yes, I have.
At the time of the fire, you were a resilience advisor, is that correct?
I was, yes.
This was within the Resilience and Emergencies Division, was it?
Yes.
The Resilience and Emergencies Division was known as DCLG Red or simply as Red, was it?
It was, yes.
Is it right that Red sat within the Department for Communities and Local Government, DCLG, as it was known at the time of the fire?
Yes.
The department, DCLG, included the word housing in its title in 2018 to become known as the Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government, MHCLG. Is that right?
The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, yes.
The department has since been rebranded to become the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, DLUHC. Is that right?
It is, yes. We've had a lot of name changes.
Well, during the course of my questioning today, I'll refer to the department as DCLG as it was at the time of the fire. It also happens to have the least number of letters in it. Is it correct that you became a resilience advisor in October 2011?
Yes, that's correct.
Was this when RED was formed?
It was about 6 months after RED was formed.
So at the time of the fire, you were a resilience advisor for just over 5.5 years, is that right?
I was, with one slight clarification on that. At the exact time of the fire, I was actually on temporary promotion. So I was what we term a head of resilience at that time. That had only been since May of that year, and it included additional duties. So rather than the specific resilience advisor duties, I had more of a managerial role as well at that point.
We will come to touch upon that. Before your resilience advisor role in October 2011, did you have any prior experience of civil contingencies?
Not civil contingencies as such. Prior to 2011, I worked in the Fire Directorate, working on human resources issues and equality and diversity within the fire service. So I worked within an emergency service context, but not specifically resilience.
At the time that you provided your second statement to the inquiry on the 26th of October of 2020, you were in the temporary post of Head of Regional Resilience in RED. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And do you still currently work within RED?
I do, yes.
What is your current role?
I'm a resilience advisor, and I specifically work with London Resilience Forum and more broadly across the South East.
Well, focusing on your role then at the time of the fire, as we've already established, you were a resilience advisor. Is it correct that you covered 3 geographical locations, those being Surrey, Sussex and London?
I did just prior to the temporary promotion. With the temporary promotion that actually I was in at the exact time of the fire, I was responsible for the whole of the South East, along with my job share partner, Lynn Dowdican.
And so does it follow from what you said that you were not a resilience advisor for those same geographical locations throughout your time as a resilience advisor from October 2011?
It was a steady progression of assuming responsibility. So when I joined in 2011, I was as a resilience advisor, I was part of our emergencies management team that does the central role that runs our operations centre. And because I've been brought in at that time specifically to support on the Olympics, which obviously was the following year, I had a supporting role in working with London Resilience Forum. Towards the end of 2012 and into the beginning of 2013, I then took on the Surrey Resilience Forum as well. And then in 2016, when one of my colleagues retired, I took on the Sussex Resilience Forum. So it was a gradual progression. And up until May 2017, I was the supporting resilience advisor in London. We had a main resilience advisor, but she retired in May 2017. So
does it follow from what you've just said that you assumed responsibility as a resilience advisor for London in May 2017?
In May 2017, I took on responsibility as head of resilience for London and the South East. But I already had responsibility as a resilience advisor, so at the slightly lower level. Right. I'd had that since early in my career in 2011. Beginning of 2012.
So just to clarify then, when did you become a resilience advisor for London?
Right. I became a support resilience advisor for London in the end of 2011. I became the lead resilience advisor in May 2017, just prior to my temporary promotion. It happened around the same time. And I then continued to be resilience advisor for London after my temporary promotion.
Thank you for that clarification. Focusing on your resilience advisor role for London for a moment, you say in your statement we don't need to go to it at the moment, but because of the size and complexity of London and the additional meetings requiring attendance, that role was shared between 2 resilience advisors. Is that right?
Yes.
Was there anything unusual about that?
It isn't how we supported all of the local resilience forums around the country. There are those that have less complex setups and less complex risks, but London, because of its nature and because of the size and complexity, which I think you've already heard from other witnesses, it was considered that 2 resilience advisors at my grade 7, were necessary.
Can you tell us if that's still the case today?
It is currently, and it has been yes, consistently since that time that we've had 2 grade 7s working with London, with the option to have support from others within the division as well.
Do you consider that 2 resilience advisors for London is sufficient?
It's certainly very helpful to have 2. It gives you much more flexibility with engagement, covering meetings. So it's a very effective way of ensuring that they get the coverage and support that they need.
You've told us that at the time of the fire, you were also acting head of resilience for the South East, and that you shared that role with your colleague Lynn Dowdican, is that right?
That's right.
Can you just assist us with how your dual roles worked in practice at the time of the fire?
Yes, absolutely, and it clarifies a bit about the resilience advisor role. At the time, what we did was we used it, the opportunity to have it as a job share. So both Lynn Dowdican and I were both resilience advisors. I for London, Surrey and Sussex, as we've described, she for Nottingham and I think Norfolk. So we shared the head of resilience job. So she worked on it half of her time and I worked on it half of my time. And then for the other half of our time, we retained our roles as resilience advisors. So we were doing both the 6 job, the grade 6 job, head of resilience, half of our time, and then the grade 7 job, the other half of our time.
I'd like to ask you. We'll come on to the roles in more detail in a moment, but I'd like to ask you about the structure and hierarchy of RED, please, as it was at the time of the fire. Did Dr. Jo Farrer, then Director General for Local Government and Public Services, have oversight of RED?
She did.
Was Gillian Kay the Director of RED?
She was.
Catherine Richardson was the Deputy Director of RED, was she?
She was, yes.
Can you assist us with how RED was structured below the Deputy Director level?
Below the Deputy Director, we had 5 heads of resilience, and they are grade 6 level civil servants who had a geographical portfolio. So though we are a national team, we have a team that's based in Bristol for the South West. The London and South East team is based in London. We have an East team, a Midlands team and a North team. And I think at the time the Midlands team was called the Central team, but it's essentially the same thing. And they had offices in Birmingham. The East team worked out of London because that was geographically most sensible for them, and there's an office in Leeds which the North team works out of, and it's still the same general geographical spread now. The other head of resilience that we had at the time was the head of emergencies management, a gentleman named Robert Mason, and he didn't have geographical responsibility, but he did have responsibility for our operations centre and that core role that we run as well. And then below the heads of resilience, there were geographical teams. Each area had resilience advisors doing similar role that I was doing with London, Surrey and Sussex, but for their LRF areas. And a small number of support staff who helped us with more administrative matters as well.
Catherine Richardson, in her statement to the inquiry, confirms at the time of the fire there were 30 RED employees, many of whom were resilience advisors. Does that accord with your recollection?
Yes.
You may have already answered this question, but you've referred to geographical locations. Was it the case that resilience advisors were assigned a geographical location in line with local resilience forums across the country?
Yes, and at that time they would have one or two resilience forums in the same way that I did, but yes, based on those geographical areas.
The inquiry has heard evidence about local resilience forums, and you deal with this in your statement also. Are they groups of category 1 and 2 responders within a given locality that meet periodically to facilitate and enhance coordination and cooperation at a local level?
Yes.
It includes some who are not category 1 and 2 responders, such as DCLG, is that right?
Yes, and military as well.
We will come on to the interplay between RED and the London Resilience Forum in particular in a moment. But before we do, I'd like to focus on the role of the Resilience and Emergencies Division. I'd like to take you to the Emergency Preparedness Statutory Guidance document that you referred to in your statement, and in particular Chapter 13, and that's at CAB 404533. It's dated March 2012, and it's titled Support and Challenge. If we can turn to page 13, we can see at paragraph 13.27, an overview of the role of DCLG is given. It says the Resilience and Emergencies Division helps responders identify for themselves the risks they face, mitigate those risks, and manage the impact of risks that materialise, including through liaison with central government departments. It then goes on at paragraph 13.28 to list out the ways that DCLG will do this. The RED department, forgive me, will do this. Act as a critical friend, question rationale, suggest alternatives, share good practice and support local planning activities. Provide a support mechanism helping local partners develop an appropriate response capability, brokering advanced mutual aid agreements between areas, make links between local responders and the lead government departments, supporting cross-boundary strategies, protocols and procedures whilst ensuring a close fit with both the needs of government in a national emergency and the needs of the local responders, and support local and national exercising, helping to ensure lessons learned are effectively shared across the relevant partnership. What did you consider the core function of RED to be?
The core function is pretty much as set out here. So it is that engagement with the local responders at the multi-agency level. So that's what the Local Resilience Forum covers, to help and support them in developing their plans, assessing their risks, undertaking their exercises, and particularly in helping them to understand any government guidance that might come out about a particular risk or capabilities, helping them to communicate back to government about any issues that they have concern on, and helping to clarify what the expectation is, and in general terms, being with them at their key meetings to understand what their key issues are, but also as a whole, RED was there to ensure that central government heard the local voice on resilience issues.
Would it be right to say that RED sought to achieve these functions through resilience advisors?
On the whole, yes, through resilience advisors.
Well, then let's look at the responsibilities of resilience advisors, which you've alluded to already. Could we go to your first witness statement, that's CLG 1309725, and if we go to page 2, paragraph 7. At paragraph 7 here, you set out the main responsibilities of a resilience advisor. Supporting local resilience forums and their members in planning for emergencies in accordance with the Cabinet Office Guidance Emergency Preparedness. LRFs are groups of Category 1 responders within a given locality. You then go on to explain when they meet and what Category 1 responders and Category 2 responders are. At B, you go on to say contributing to the development of national policy for a particular resilience capability, for example, site clearance. We work closely with other government departments, ensuring local interests are represented in their relevant policy development. And then at C, if an emergency is declared, Acting as Government Liaison Officer, this role involves acting as a central government representative at meetings of the Strategic Coordination Group, SCG, supporting local responders and acting as a link between them and central government, and or undertaking a role in the Red Operations Centre, which could include drafting briefings to inform ministerial decision making. The Grenfell Tower fire was declared as a major incident at a very early stage because of its impact. Could we therefore break down a resilience advisor role into two parts? The first part being a pre-emergency phase dealing with A and B as you set out in your statement, and an emergency phase dealing with that section C. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
I'd like to delve a little deeper then into each of those, the pre-emergency and the emergency phase. Focusing firstly on pre-emergency and the assessment of risk alone. You refer in your statement, we don't need to turn it up now, but you provide information about national risks to the LRF, which they needed to plan for. Can you assist us with how that would, particularly in London, how that would be done?
Well, the National Risk Assessment is a central government development, which I think you, the inquiry, will already have heard a little bit about from, I think, from Catherine Hammond. So that is the process by which Cabinet Office Civil Contingency Secretariat works with central government departments to work out what the key national risks are. That's produced into the National Risk Assessment, and that is available to local resilience forums for them to look at the national risks and to consider how those risks might affect them in their area, how they might manifest in their area. A lot of risks will be ones that you will see, particularly for London in their area, but some may not be. So for some parts of the country, there are specific things about coastal flooding, East Coast coastal flooding and things which are very specific to their areas, but are a big national risk. And in other areas, obviously, if you're in the middle of the country, that's of no relevance to you at all. So that national risk assessment is something, as I say, which is made available to resilience forums, and which London would have had available to them. And what Cabinet Office do when they bring out the risk assessment is they also have a tendency to hold workshops which are available to LRF members to understand how the risk assessment's working, to give them the opportunity to work through that process in order that it will inform their thinking. What we do within RED as resilience advisors is we work alongside the LRFs to help them to think about the risk in their area, but also to answer questions. If there are more questions about how does this work, what exactly does this mean, we are their bridge back into central government in order to get more of those things answered. Also, if there are key risks which other areas are working on, we can make that bridge between the two areas so that they can talk more about how they're approaching their particular risk and talk through that. So we're there to support them in a number of ways. It's not our decision what their final risk is. That's a local decision based on this information, but we're there to support them in the process.
And when you provide this support and are available for questioning by the London Resilience Forum in this particular example that I'm asking you about, how would that be done? Would that be done at the London Resilience Forum meetings that take place, as we've heard from Mr. Hetherington, 3 times a year, I believe it was?
Risk is usually dealt with at a specific risk meeting and a risk working group. And in London, they do have what they call LRAG, which is the London Risk, Assessment Group. And that works through what risk for London might be and brings the practitioner level expertise to looking at risk. And we engage with that process as well, attending those meetings. And if there are clarifications to be made, we can help with that either directly in the meeting or obviously taking that information away, speaking to Cabinet Office or others. So it could be another lead government department that actually owns that risk, I think as has been discussed before. And we can also reach back into other government departments to get more understanding and bring those back. So it's at that level that we specifically help with that support on risk.
So could I just clarify then, a resilience advisor for RED, somebody like yourself, for example, would attend the London Resilience Forum meetings, would they?
Yes, we'd attend several kinds of Resilience Forum meetings. So the executive level, which is normally, I think, referred to as the London Resilience Forum, which is where all the senior people, RED does attend there, and it's usually my deputy director that attends that, supported by one of us in the London team within RED.
And you mentioned the London Resilience Programme Board earlier in your evidence, and a subset of the London Resilience Programme Board, I believe, it is LRAG, is that right?
Yes, that's right. And we attend both of those.
You mention it in your statement, we don't need to go to it right away, about capabilities. Can you assist us with what capabilities are? Do they inform risk?
Capabilities are how you deal with risk. So if you have a risk, so for instance, I mentioned East Coast tidal surge for want of picking one. So the risk there is that there will be a massive inundation of water and people will need to be moved from their homes. So the capability that goes with that is evacuation and shelter. So it's the how you do the things that come out of the risk. So they don't inform the risk as such. The risk informs what capabilities you might need. But what the risk also does is it, and there was mention the other day of planning assumptions. So alongside your risk, it's also what impact is that risk going to have. So what level does that mean? So in the example I've given you for East Coast tidal surge, there are many thousands of people who might need to be evacuated. So therefore the capabilities around that are how do you evacuate these large number of people? Do we have the capability to do that?
Right. Well, thank you for explaining that. Three of your colleagues who have provided statements to the inquiry, who were either resilience advisors or head of resilience themselves, have explained in their statements what capabilities they led on. Lynn Dowderkin says in her statement she led on evacuation and shelter. Robert Mason, who, as you've already told us, was head of the emergencies management at the time of the fire as well, says in his statement that he was responsible for specific risks owned by DCLG on the National Risk Register, such as the sudden influx of British nationals into the country. And Kate Head in her statement says that she was responsible for a cluster of environmental capabilities, such as extreme weather, animal disease and plant disease. Did you have a capability which you led on?
I did. I had two at that time. One was industrial action and the other was site clearance.
Can you help with how many capabilities there were?
It's a very good question. I don't know specifically, but there are, and now I'm stretching somewhere in the region of 30. There is a list of them, but it's a number. And as you will have noticed from what you've read out, there's a difference between some of those capabilities, which are the things that we do to make things better, so the evacuation and shelter, and some of the items that you've talked about, which is more around the risks. So whether industrial action was more around the risk, but then how do you deal with that? What does it look like? So there are a variety of things, all of which comes under our capability headings and would have had a lead within the division as expressed there.
Now, I think you've answered this already, but did responsibility for those capabilities feed into the risk assessment work that RED was involved in?
It's parallel with it. So the risk is the what might happen and what's the likely impact, and the capabilities look at that impact, and then how you need to deal with it, what abilities you need to have to deal with it.
I'd like to turn to emergency planning next, if I may. You say in your statement we don't need to go to it unless you'd like me to take you to it. But prior to the 14th of June of 2017, your May day-to-day work involved attending meetings of LRFs and supporting LRF partners at a strategic level in their emergency planning duties. How did you support the London Resilience Forum with their emergency planning duties?
As I've described already, this is through engagement either in their working groups, such as the Risk Working Group, but others including, for instance, their humanitarian assistance, evacuation and shelter, where they required central government input. A lot of the development work was done by local practitioners based on their intimate knowledge as emergency planners about how things should be done. Our input was much more on what the government aspect of that might be, what government guidance was, whether there was a likely change to legislation that might affect the way that they planned, or particular aspects of the way that they planned. And we would engage, as I say, in working groups, but then we would also engage with the programme board, where there is an overview of all the plans and the capabilities, and there is an operational discussion about how all of that works. And again, we bring central government information into that. Sometimes we'll take away questions for that for other government departments to feed into that process. And then ultimately, taking part in the executive level meeting, which is termed the LRF meeting, or the LRF exec, which is where the strategic leaders get together to see the information that's put to them on the work that's been done, and either approve plans or ask for further work to be done, and take the strategic forward view of how London Resilience should be developed.
I would like to drill a little deeper into that, if I may. Let's go to your first witness statement, please, page 3, at paragraph 10. You say this: we assisted in particular in the formulation of multi-agency emergency plans, and in the case of London, pan-London emergency plans. These are overarching plans for general emergency procedures and specific plans on capabilities such as mass fatalities, evacuation and shelter and flooding. To either prevent or mitigate the impact of an incident, they are developed by working groups which involve representatives of Category 1 responders, including in London, the London boroughs. Are you referring here, when you talk about pan-London emergency plans, are you saying that that's the same as multi-agency plans, or are they something different?
I think that sentence was to describe both what we generally do with multi-agency plans when we consider the majority of LRFs, and how that works through in London, because London arrangements, as you've already heard, are slightly different to others because it's such a large area, and you've got the local resilience forum, which covers the area, but you've also got borough resilience forums as well. So it is more complicated than other areas. So that's why I talked about the pan-London plans. They are their multi-agency plans, but they are done for a bigger area with more complexity than we might see in other areas. So that's why I put those two definitions in.
So would this have included the humanitarian assistance framework, for example?
Yes.
And when you mentioned working groups, was this the local authorities panel?
I did also attend the local authorities panel, but the local authorities panel is not a working group. That's a separate and, again, strategic level group, but that is specifically looking at local authority resilience issues rather than multi-agency resilience issues. And we attended their meetings, again, to provide information about what central government was doing, in the same way that we did for the LRF executive meeting.
Now, You say here in your statement that we assisted in the formulation of multi-agency emergency plans. How would a resilience advisor for London assist in the formulation of overarching plans?
Very much the way that I've described to you, bringing that additional information, additional clarification, wider context, and also helping with sharing. So we will share between LRFs if one particular LRF has developed a plan which perhaps due to an exercise or an emergency has been proved to be either very effective or that they've had to make changes to. We will share that as well with resilience forums to enable them in their planning too. So it's very much that kind of supportive, informative and sharing role that we have.
You say in your statement also that you did not approve any emergency plans. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would anyone within RED approve any emergency plans?
No.
Can you explain why that is?
That's not how either the legislation, the regulations or the guidance were set up. That was not the role that we were given. We were given the role to support, but it was for local resilience forums to satisfy themselves through a multitude of different support mechanisms that their plans were effective as required.
So it would be the responsibility of the London Resilience Forum, would it, to approve their plans?
Yes.
I'd like to ask you next about review of plans. I appreciate there's a little bit of overlap between these areas, but I'm trying to unpick it as best we can. What involvement did DCLG RED have in the 3-year cycle review, or of any review of Pan-London plans for that matter?
Again, it really is very much as I described. So in order to keep plans current, to make sure that they took account of any changes, as I said, changes in legislation, but also changes in local arrangements or any information coming from real events or exercises, a cycle of re-looking at plans was advised. And in general terms, plans would be looked at every 3 years, and we would take part in that process with the working group. So it's very much along the lines of how I've just described. Most LRFs have plans for all of their risks and capabilities. So what we would be doing now would be refreshing those. There aren't very many plans that are taken from scratch, never having been developed before. So it is very much as I've described already, really.
So RED wouldn't formulate plans. You said that they would assist.
Yes, absolutely. We assist. Local resilience forums and partners have their own emergency planners who are skilled in this area. We bring that other dimension, that information from government, and that reach back into the departments.
And so RED wouldn't approve any plans and they wouldn't review any plans, is that right?
We wouldn't approve them and we wouldn't ask to review them. We would take part in the natural cycle of review that the LRF undertakes.
Do you consider the role of the resilience advisor in the London Resilience Forum was effective?
Yes, I think we brought a lot of support. We certainly brought knowledge of what was happening elsewhere, and we had that key role of being able to access other government departments, ask questions, bring information. So I think it was and is an effective role.
I'd like to ask you, and you've referred to it already, you've mentioned the Borough Resilience Forum. At the time of the Grenfell Tower fire, was RED involved at that BRF level?
No.
Is it now?
We engage with them on particular set pieces that they do. So we, if they have working days where they will come together, we will go along, so that obviously we can meet those involved so that they understand a bit more about what we do, but also to contribute on any particular key points that they might want additional information on. For instance, most recently, one of my colleagues spoke to the London Borough Resilience Forum chairs about the National Strategy Review.
So since this change, or can you tell us when did this change take place?
It's been a gradual change, but certainly after 2017, when we had more resourcing to enable us to engage more widely, it's been easier to attend these meetings.
So was this after June 2017 or before? In terms of resourcing?
In terms of resourcing, it was after.
Was that resourcing addressed as a result of the fire, or?
A number of issues. Certainly 2017 as a whole, as people will recall, was a very difficult year, and there was a review of how well resourced we were to deal with that number of emergencies.
And so since the gradual infiltration of RED into the BRF level, how would you say it's been working in practice?
Well, our main form of involvement with London LRF is still through the main overarching multi-agency format. I believe we do have more visibility at the local level, not only through the kind of meetings that I've described to you, but also through attendance at exercises. And we were attending some borough level exercises even prior to this, and I mention in my evidence that, for instance, the pandemic exercise.
Yes, we're going to come on to that.
I will preempt that then.
That's a good segue into exercises. So these plans and these multi-agency plans, Pan-London plans that we've just been talking about, they would be tested, wouldn't they?
Yes.
And RED resilience advisors would take part in those tests or exercises as well, wouldn't they?
Yes.
I'd like to ask you about some of those exercises. You've just alluded to some of them. If we can go to your second witness statement, please. That's CLG 3030739. And if we could go to page 2, paragraph 8, please. We can see here that you say, I attended the major live exercise known as Exercise Unified Response on the 29th of February to the 4th of March 2016, which simulated a building collapse onto an underground station and trains in London. I was also involved in Exercise Cygnus. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
A national level Tier 1, i.e. involving ministers exercise that took place from the 18th to the 20th of October 2016 to test the UK's response to a pandemic influenza. I took part in London's part of this exercise, which included tabletop exercises at borough level across all London boroughs to test the pandemic influenza plans for London. We're just pausing there before I take you on to paragraph 9 of your statement. Exercise Unified Response that you mentioned there in 2016. What was your involvement in that exercise?
I was involved in some of the government input to the development alongside my colleague who led for us at the time on London. And very specifically, I had an interest in this particular exercise in my lead on site clearance capability. And we were developing, or had developed at that time, some new guidance for local partners. And one of the items that was tested out through this was the effectiveness of that guidance as it translated into London's framework.
So did you take part in the live aspect?
I did, yes.
Can you tell us how many members of RED attended, to the best of your knowledge?
Overall, we probably had about, I think, 10 of the team who had some involvement or other. We had 2 of the leads in London, so they took a major role, particularly in what they call XCon, which is the overall overview of the exercise and how well the exercise is working, and taking the part of the government liaison officer. But we also had others who took part in simulated operation cell side of things as well. So there were, I mean, I say it's, I would say it was about that number because we had several people moving in and out of the exercise. I didn't actually have a list of how many did engage.
You mention here at paragraph 8 of your statement a tabletop exercise. It may be obvious, but can you tell us what that would involve?
A tabletop exercise is sort of as it sounds. You are given, if you sit around a table, you're given information and you talk through how you might deal with that. So you simulate it, but only using paper, not using actual people out doing it. And that can go from, as I say, a small discussion of what would we do next, right through to using the papers to say, right, this is the scenario that's just happened. I would be asking my team to do this. How does this work? And actually testing plans in that way. But it doesn't require a whole setup and actual people doing the...
Would you be able to say how many of members of RED attended that?
The particular one that I'm referring to, the pandemic influenza one there, I was our RED representative for that. If for a tabletop, it would be unusual to have more than one person from RED there because we're not simulating lots of different roles.
We can see at paragraph 9 of your statement, I was also involved in Exercise Safer City on the 12th of January and 9th of February 2017. This tabletop exercise considered the effect on London of a severe weather event, and Category 1 and 2 and Category 2 responders attended to identify key impacts and test the effectiveness of response plans in such a situation. What was your involvement in this test?
Again, taking the government role, that's usually what we do in any kind of exercise, is we simulate what we would do if this were the real thing. But also it gives us the opportunity to bring that wider experience round the table. But it is very much trying to simulate what would happen in those conditions if it were a real emergency.
When you say government role, do you mean the government liaison officer role?
Yes.
And we'll come on to that in due course. Are you able to say of this Exercise Safer City exercise, how many members of RED attended, or was it you alone again?
I believe that on one day I may have been there on my own, but I think on the other day I had another colleague with me. I'm not totally sure which colleague that was, but I think I had someone shadowing me for one of the other days.
Now, your colleague Lynn Dowdican, in her second statement, I wonder if we could go to that. That's CLG 3030742, page 2, paragraph 7. She says this: the last resilience exercise involving local responders and government before the Grenfell Tower fire took place on 17th of May 2017. The exercise simulated a nuclear emergency. The exercise covered how to evacuate a population away from a nuclear leak, how to contain that leak, and how to ensure efficient communications with the rest of the country. It was an opportunity for RED to revise the MHCLG emergency response plan. She then goes on to list 3 other members who attended, or took part, I should say, in that exercise. Can we take it that you didn't?
No, this one was actually based around Suffolk, which is an area that Lynn Dowdican led on as resilience advisor. So that was outside my area, so I wouldn't have attended that unless they had needed additional support, because we do work across teams as well when necessary, obviously.
Turning then to RED's own internal training, is it right that you were joint RED lead on exercises and training capabilities with Lynn Dowdercan?
During that time that we were on temporary promotion to Head of Resilience, yes.
At paragraph 9 of this statement that we're looking at now, no, forgive me, the first, Lynn Dowdercan's first witness statement, if we could go to CLG 3030419, please, and page 2, paragraph 9. We can see there on the second line, the sentence starts, training was delivered in multiple forms, including formal induction training, revision exercises in relation to the DCLG emergency response plan, and debriefs after RED responses to reflect on lessons learned. We also arranged RED training days, held training sessions within team meetings, and ran a mentoring programme. There were additionally mock resilience exercises where a simulated RED response were required. Do you agree with that list of training? Is there anything you would wish to add?
No, that's a fairly comprehensive covering of what we were doing.
Is it right that members of RED were strongly encouraged to undertake voluntary training through the Emergency Planning College, known as EPC?
It was an option that was open to us. And yes, encouragement was given if there were particular courses there that people felt would enhance their capability.
Now, did you undertake EPC training?
I have undertaken one course with the EPC, and I've also been a subject matter expert on another course with the EPC.
Your own training with the EPC, can you recall what year that took place in?
Actually, that was very recent. Most of my training prior to that was in-house training.
According to Catherine Richardson in her statement, I don't propose to take you to it, but we've referred to it already. She said that at the time of the fire there were 30 employees of RED, and she says that there were between 30 to 50 staff within RED. I'd like to show you a spreadsheet now. It's CAB 30s14793. And it's a spreadsheet of central government attendance at EPC training. Now, if we could go down to row 119, that's where we can see DCLG. And we can see there workshops supporting multi-agency risk assessment, 6th of February 2014, 2 attended. Can you see that?
Yes.
The next line on the next row, 13th of May 2015, if we can go across slightly to the next column, we can see 1 attended.
Yes.
And on the 29th of April of 2016, we can see 1 attended.
Yes.
So 4 people in 3 years.
Yes.
Considering attendance was strongly encouraged, would you agree this was a rather poor uptake?
It is low numbers. There were other central training that was on offer as well, which more staff would have taken up. But yes, it isn't a particularly high number.
Do you consider that members of RED received adequate training at the time of the fire?
Yes, they required training that gave them an understanding of their roles, and there was a lot of on-the-job training at that time.
Has the approach to training changed at all since 2017?
Yes, we have taken a much more professionalised approach to our training, much more structured. And that's something which we are in the process of developing further. The work that Lynn and I did during this period was moving in that direction very much to make it a more structured process than it had been previously. But it has had variations over the years.
I'd like to next turn to the emergency phase. So we've spoken about the pre-emergency phase that RED is involved in. I'd like to move to the emergency phase. RED's role in an emergency is encapsulated in DCLG's emergency response plan, and I'd like to turn to that now at CLG 405657, please. This plan is version 3.4, and we can see at the bottom it's dated June 2017. Was it therefore the version that was in place at the time of the fire?
I believe so, yes.
Could we turn to page 54, please? We can see here a diagram titled Model of the Reporting Structures and Roles Within a Full-Scale Operations Centre. We can see at the top of this diagram a duty officer who then uses their judgment to consider, presumably, whether they notify the deputy director, the duty head of resilience, or the head of the emergencies management team. And we can see there's a number of actions that flow from that, the most serious of which being resources insufficient to deal with the incident, which then leads to the issue of an emergency notice. Can you see that?
Yes.
And the issue of an emergency notice then leads to activation of an operations centre. Can you see that?
Yes.
And we can see there at the bottom of the page the activation, the operations centre, would comprise of a response director, a response manager, an operations centre manager, and then there are 4 situation cells there are 4 cells that we can see there. The first being a situation cell, second a policy cell, briefing cell, analysis cell. They feed into government, central government, would that be right?
Yes.
Safe for SAGE.
Yes. So just to explain that, I think the information from our cells would be going into the briefing for COBRA. We wouldn't provide information directly into SAGE. That's done in a different way.
Now, each of these cells that we can see here has an action card, which is effectively a document that sets out the parameters of that particular cell. Is that right?
Yes.
So by that I mean a situation cell would have an action card explaining what that situation cell is about.
Yes.
We can go to page 22, please, of this document, and here we can see a list of roles and cells which have accompanying action cards. So we can see the response director, so on and so forth. When dealing with the response, so I will come on to deal with those action cards in more detail in due course when dealing with the actual response to the Grenfell Tower fire, which is where I'd like to now turn. So on the 14th of June, you fulfilled the role of duty head of resilience, didn't you?
I did, yes.
There is no action card, as we can see on the screen in front of us, in this emergency response plan for that role, is there?
No, there isn't.
Can you assist us with why that was?
One hadn't been developed, and in fact, it has only very recently been developed due to discussions about the fact that it was absent from our suite of documents.
You say that it's only been done recently. We're talking about events in 2017. Can you assist with why it's taken some time to come to fruition?
My view on this is that the understanding at the time was that a duty head of resilience, because it was drawn from the regional head of resilience role, that people within that role would understand what they needed to do. That's my take of why there wasn't one there. But obviously we have considered that, or our senior leadership team has considered that in more detail recently, and one has been developed.
Can I take it by the development of one now that there's an acceptance that there should have been one at the time of the fire?
I think we all agree it would be helpful, yes.
Now that on the night of the fire, it was your first night fulfilling this role, wasn't it?
It was.
Did the absence of an action card, considering this was your first night in that role, hinder you in navigating your role at all?
I don't believe so. I had a lot of experience of working with duty heads of resilience. I'd been a duty officer myself on many, many occasions, and I had seen the role that they performed and what they did. So I don't believe it held me back. I would comment that someone coming new into that role, having a piece of paper is always useful. It's reassuring, but I didn't feel that I was lacking in the knowledge that I needed to undertake the role.
So we have already established at the start of your evidence that at the time of the fire you'd been a resilience advisor for about 5.5 years, subject to the temporary promotion role that you undertook.
Yes.
What training did you receive for this specific duty head of resilience, that role that you played that evening?
I had no specific training other than, as I've explained, observing and working with others.
In your first statement, we can take you to it now, at CLG 1309725, page 4, paragraph 14. You say there right at the bottom of the paragraph, it's the last two lines, I had worked on over 100 emergencies before Grenfell. This had included acting as a GLO, a GLO, I believe, yes. When there were floods in Surrey in 2014, working as an operations centre manager during the migrant crisis at Calais in 2015, and working in the operations centre during the Manchester and London bridge attacks in 2017. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
How many times had you acted as a GLO before?
I couldn't tell you precisely a significant number, both as dialing in as a duty officer and undertaking the government liaison officer role there, and in my own region and in other regions as well, but I've never actually added that up.
Now, in line with the emergency response plan, there were also 2 duty officers who were on duty that night. Is that right?
Yes.
One of those duty officers was Denise Welch. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Had you worked with her before?
Yes, I'd worked with Denise since she joined RED.
How would you describe her level of experience as of June 2017?
She was very experienced. She had been involved as a government liaison officer in a number of emergencies, some of them quite significant. And most recently to this, she had been one of the duty officers on duty on the night of the Manchester Arena bombing.
So at the time of the fire, Miss Welch had been a member of RED, forgive me, for just over 3 years. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
She says in her statement, and let's go to it, CLG 30737, please. If we can go to page 3 and paragraph 12. The third line down, my first ever week as a RED duty officer was during Storm Desmond in December 2015, where there were significant flooding impacts in Cumbria and Lancashire. I performed the role of GLO as well as providing support to the Weekend Operations Centre. I was also on duty for the Manchester Arena bombing in May 2017, working through the night as part of a duty team to pull together the latest situation updates to hand over to the RED Operations Centre in the morning. Further, I was deployed as a government liaison officer following the London bridge attack in June 2017. So the first time she held a duty officer role was in December 2015, is that right?
Yes.
And so at the time of the fire, her experience spanned 1.5 years. Would you agree with that?
As a duty officer, yes, I would agree with that.
Miss Welch outlines here 2 occasions where she performed the role as a GLO. If we go to paragraph 11, please, let's go up slightly. She says it's the last sentence at paragraph 11. At the time of the Grenfell Tower fire, I had been a resilience advisor for around 9 months. Can you see that?
Yes.
Considering these matters, so far as you were concerned, do you still believe that she was an experienced duty officer?
She was. She'd had a lot of involvement in some quite crucial incidents and had dealt with them very well.
Do you consider she was an experienced GLOW?
Yes. I guess my answer to the previous question would be the same.
Let's go to paragraph 14 of her statement, please. It's just further down this page. She says this: at the time of the fire, there was no specific training for red duty officers. Before my first duty shift in December 2015, I arranged to run through the duty officer action card with an experienced colleague to ensure I fully understood the role. The action card set out practical information, such as how to transfer the duty number to your phone and how to automatically forward emails sent to Red Control to your own inbox, as well as providing an overview of the duty officer's responsibilities, both during normal business hours and out of office hours. Can you assist with why that was the case, that Miss Welch didn't have training?
We didn't at that time have a formal duty officer training package that we rolled out to duty officers. There was general training on government liaison expectations and what that role would involve, which was developed by some of my colleagues prior to Linda Adkin and I taking on this, but not a specific duty officer one.
The description that we can see here that Miss Welch gives, an informal read-through, appears to be rather basic. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and that's something which we've done a lot since then to improve, and we now have a specific duty officer training programme.
Can you assist with whether Miss Welch received training as a GLOW?
I can't say specifically. I know that GLOW training was available at the time that Miss Welch was working with us. I don't recall whether she was on one of those courses or not.
Would you agree that there was a lack of specific training for the duty officer role at the time of the Grenfell Tower fire?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And would you agree that that's deficient?
At the time, yes, I would agree.
Turning to the action card for her role that morning then, please, if we could go back to CLG 405657, please, at page 44. We can see there at the top, this is the red duty officer action card, is that right?
Yes.
And it says, role, you are the initial contact between DCLG and other organisations for developing incidents and the route through which incidents are escalated to senior staff. You will be on call throughout your duty officer period, including being available outside of normal working hours to receive telephone calls and undertake a range of duties. You will be expected to dial into strategic coordinating groups as government liaison officer, dial into teleconferences relating to LRF preparedness activity for rising tide emergencies, and be prepared to provide ministers, senior management, resilience and emergencies division, RED and lead government departments with situation reports on the local consequences of emergencies. You may also be required to provide briefing for ministers, senior officials for any cross-government discussions which are arranged out of normal working hours. Does that summarise, to your knowledge, the role of the red duty officer?
Yes, as it was then.
Moving on to the first notification then. Miss Welch was first contacted by the Cabinet Office Civil Contingency Secretariat about the fire. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
You received a telephone call from her at 3:30 on the 14th of June, is that right?
Yes.
You say at paragraph 23 of your first witness statement, we don't need to go to it unless you'd like me to take you to it, that you asked her to speak to the Home Office duty fire officer to ask for further information, is that right?
Yes.
And we can see here an email I'd like to take you to, CLG 408000. If we could go to page 3, please. Towards the bottom of the page after the press test banner, an email on the 14th of June at 4:29 from David Norris of the Home Office. The inquiry has received evidence from the Home Office confirming that Mr. Norris was the fire duty officer that night. Is that your understanding?
It is, yes.
And he says in this email at 4:29, all with thanks to Denise Welch in red, I've just been informed of a significant fire in a 24-storey high-rise residential tower, Grenfell Tower, Latimer Road, West London. We can then go down page 4. We can see an email at 4:13 sent by Miss Welch to the Home Office fire duty officer, where she advises him of it. Just to confirm then, was the first time, so far as your understanding is concerned, was the first time a fire duty officer of the Home Office was aware of the fire was when Red informed them?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Would you have expected them to be aware before Red?
They often are. Given their role in fire, there is an expectation that they are informed of any fires of note, and we quite often get our notification about fires directly from them. So it is less usual that it is this way around.
I'd like to ask you next about contact with London Resilience. If we could go to your first witness statement, page 7, at paragraph 24, please. We can see here at paragraph 24, you say, I rang the London Resilience team. Just pausing there, the inquiry has heard about the London Resilience Group, which used to be known as the London Resilience Team. Can we take it that this is the London Resilience Group?
Yes.
And they confirmed that a major incident had been declared and there would be an SCG at around 5 a.m. I asked Denise to dial in her capacity as duty officer undertaking the GLOW role. Can you recall with whom you spoke at the London Resilience Group?
I can't recall, and I didn't have anything specifically, but in my mind I'm thinking it's Matt Hogan, but I'm not at this point completely sure.
The inquiry has heard evidence that Matthew Hogan was the London Resilience duty manager that evening, and Toby Gould was the strategic advisor. Does that assist your recollection?
Yes, that seems reasonable then.
What was the purpose of your call to the London Resilience Group?
Was to get any further information and to understand if an SCG was going to be held, and therefore whether we could attend and understand more about what was taking place and how things were progressing. I would add that, again, with the point about the hearing from the fire duty officer, it is more normal that we would also hear about an event in London from the London Resilience Group, particularly of this nature. So this was obviously the other way round to how it often is.
So it was unusual that you had not heard directly from the London Resilience Group?
For this scale of emergency, yes.
Well, I'm about to move on to a topic that is not going to be quick. I know it's a little early, but it might be in a convenient moment to have a break now.
It's not particularly early and it's certainly convenient, so we'll do that. Ms McManus, we have a break during the morning. And this is obviously a good time to take it. So we'll stop now. We'll resume, please, at 11:30. And I have to ask you on this and other occasions when you leave the room while you're giving evidence, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or
Okay.
anything to do with it. All right?
Thank
you very much. Would you go with the usher, please? Thank you very much. 11:30 then, please. Okay. Would you ask Miss McManus to come back in, please? Thank you. Right, Mr. McManus, ready to carry on?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Malhotra.
Just before the break, Ms McManus, we were talking about events in the early hours of the 14th of June. And we've spoken about Miss Welch, who first notified you and who then went on to notify the Home Office fire duty officer. Is it right to say that you appointed Miss Welch as the government liaison officer, the GLOW, for the 5 o'clock SCG that morning?
I did.
Was there any reason why you asked Miss Welch to assume this role rather than assuming it yourself?
It is usual for the duty officer to take that role rather than for the head of resilience to take that role. I did have a discussion with her to make sure that she was content to do that she felt comfortable in doing it, and she did. And as I say, that is the normal procedure that we would take.
Could I just clarify one matter? Is it ordinarily the case that a resilience advisor would only be someone who would be suitable for a GLOW role? Or could anybody working within RED who wasn't a resilience advisor assume the responsibility of being a GLOW?
Anybody within RED who undertakes the role of a duty officer is suitable to undertake that GLOW role, and that's our expectation out of hours, that they will do that.
I'd like to take you to your first witness statement, please, at page 23, paragraph 95. We can see here you say the following. The focus of our role in RED is the collection and sharing of information, and to this end the operations centre is set up. We are not emergency responders. GLOWs are not based at the scene of the emergency but remotely with other GOLD responders at the Strategic Command Centre. Our role to provide strategic information and signpost as necessary where the responder organisations can get wider help and support. GLOWs obtain relevant information from SCGs. You say here that GLOWs are not sent to the scene. Can you explain why that is the case?
When the operations for an emergency are set up, the GOLD operations, so the Strategic Coordinating Group, is usually at a designated centre, which is called the Strategic Coordination Centre, which is set up specifically to provide the support necessary for all of those strategic leaders who are coming together. It is normal for the people at the level below, so the silver level, to either be with them or more co-located to the emergency, but at that gold level, at the strategic level, it is not on the scene of the emergency.
So would a GLOW be considered gold level?
Yes.
It makes reference here to a strategic coordination centre in your statement, a strategic command centre, forgive me. Is that the same as a special operations room, or is that something different?
Right. Special operations room is something specific to London and to the Metropolitan Police. It's what they call their centre near Lambeth, where they bring together people. It's mainly for Metropolitan Police Service arrangements, but has the facility to have multi-agency there too. So it's a very specific London name. But to all intents and purposes, the SOR, as they call it, the Strategic Operations Room, has tended to be the Strategic Coordination Centre.
And was that the case in the response to the Grenfell Tower fire?
Yes, it was.
And would there be capacity and the facility for a GLOW to attend the SOR?
Yes, and in at a later point we did deploy a glow specifically down there.
So Miss Welch was first notified of the fire at around 3:30, that's right, isn't it?
Yes.
The first SCG took place at 5. Would it be fair to say that there was a window of opportunity for her to attend, Saul?
There was, and I thought through that at the time. It is not normal for our duty officers to travel, partly due to practicalities, because our duty officers can be covering any part of the country, but also because of the nature of what they're doing, and the fact that it's a small team covering at that point. Dialing in is the most effective and the quickest way. And as you'll see from my evidence as well, I also considered that travelling into London at that time of the morning was not a sensible thing to be asking the government liaison officer to do.
Would you accept that there are advantages to being present and having face-to-face communication with other members of the SCG in and out of the meeting?
Yes, I would accept that.
Let's go to the department's emergency plan again, please, and that's at CLG 405657. If we could go to page 40, please. And it's the action card again for the duty officer, the government liaison officer role. The government liaison officer action card, it says there in the heading, deployed to a strategic coordination centre. It then goes on to say for the role, you have been deployed as government liaison officer to a strategic coordination centre, an SCC. Your role is to support the local and national emergency management arrangements before, during and after an emergency by providing a government presence at the local level. You will attend strategic coordinating groups, SCG meetings, and will act as a single point of contact through which communications to and from central government flow. It then goes on to say in the penultimate paragraph there, the final line, you may also need to prepare the SCG chair for dialing into a COBRA meeting to update ministers directly. In the blue banner we can see there it says before departure, make sure you have with you your laptop, BlackBerry, so on and so forth. It then goes on to say at the second bullet point, confirm the location of the SCC. Depending on the location of the incident, it may not be established in the usual place. It then goes to give advice on arrival. You should introduce yourself to the SCG chair, so on and so forth. Would you agree that this action card for the GLOW role, as we can see in the title and as we've seen set out here, is based on a scenario where physical deployment would take place to the SCC?
Absolutely, yes. That's always the preference when you are taking part as government liaison as a government liaison officer, to be there in person. It's a slightly different case when we are dealing with duty officers, because as I've explained, duty officers are working out of hours, often covering areas of the country that they are not in or not familiar with. And this is specifically talking about the government liaison role in general terms.
Yes, which you had appointed Miss Welch to be for the 5 o'clock SCG, is that right?
Yes.
So this is the role that she was fulfilling at that time?
Yes.
A role where it was envisaged she would be deployed to the SCC?
If I could explain further, that is the first default, is to be deployed. It is perfectly common for us to ring in as government liaison officers remotely. This is done on many occasions, and certainly by duty officers, that is the most normal way of doing it. If it looks like it's going to be a protracted incident, we would definitely look to have a government liaison officer there, and that is a role most usually taken on by the resilience advisor for that area.
Could I invite you to look at Catherine Richardson's first witness statement, please? That's CLG 3030412. And if we could go to page 27, paragraph 105 of her statement. She says the following: I have also thought long and hard about whether the department could have done more sooner. For example, should RED have had people on the ground immediately following the fire to gauge the adequacy of the local response? In truth, in almost all cases, local responders have effective emergency response plans and are able to ensure that emergency relief is properly managed. In those cases, central interface can negatively affect
central interference, I think that's the...
Central interference can negatively affect the local response. I can see that in retrospect it would have been better if a GLOW had been physically deployed to the scene earlier to get a better understanding of what was going on and what was needed. I do not think that I or the department would necessarily have done anything differently. We had not dealt with a disaster of this scale in living memory, and even an experienced Red GLOW present on the ground would have struggled in the first few days to have distinguished between the sort of chaos that would ordinarily be expected following a major disaster and chaos caused by poor organisation. Furthermore, for the reasons I explain above, I do not think it would always be beneficial to have observers on the ground. However, following the series of incidents in 2017, including the Grenfell Tower fire, RED officials are now urgently physically deployed to the site of an emergency whenever it is considered appropriate. In addition, since the Grenfell Tower fire, the GLOW's role in identifying signs of overstretch in a local response has been formalised. Could I just clarify one matter with you then? As Miss Richardson says in her statement here, the current position before she left DCLG RED was that a GLOW was not only deployed to the Strategic Coordination Centre, but is now physically deployed to the scene of an incident. Have I understood that right?
No, if I could clarify on that, I think when Catherine is referring to the site of an emergency, she means the area in which the emergency is happening. So, for instance, she is talking about Salisbury, she is talking about wherever that might be. At the Strategic Coordinating Centre, we would not send a GLOW actually down to the scene of an emergency. It's not our role to be there as a responder, and we would get in the way because someone would feel that they needed to take care of us. Our role is to be round that table having those discussions. Absolutely, her point about face-to-face makes a huge difference, but she's not actually referring to being at a crash site or she's talking about the area in which the emergency is taking place.
And so, having seen what Miss Richardson says in her statement, have you since reflected that deployment of the GLOW at that early stage to the SCC at SOAR would have been beneficial in order for DCLG RED to have eyes on the ground, as it were?
I have reflected on this, and I think that certainly what I would have considered would have been helpful at that point is if there had been any indication that actually things were not going in the direction that they should have been, that we would have brought in people earlier, possibly with the intention of sending someone down to the Strategic Coordination Centre. And I have thought that through. The indications we had at that time didn't bring me to that conclusion on the night.
We've discussed the role of Miss Welch, the first duty officer. Who was the second duty officer?
Jose Espinera.
Did you call upon him to assist?
I didn't. At the time we were tracking one major meeting, the SCG, but it was always possible that other meetings, such as mass fatality meetings, could be called. Equally, it's also possible that we could have had concurrent incidents called in. So engaging both of the duty officers at that time didn't seem to be sensible. And as you'll see in my evidence, I felt that it was worth giving him the opportunity to sleep on for a while and therefore be fresher for the morning and for whatever support would be needed then.
And for completeness, we can see that at CLG 3030445, an email that you sent at 5:25 that morning. Denise is on London call currently, nothing for you to do currently, so hope you get some sleep. Is that right?
That's right.
Now, in your first witness statement, forgive me if we can go back to that again, page 7, paragraph 22, please. We can see there at the very final sentence of paragraph 22, you say this: on seeing the footage, I immediately recognised the seriousness of the incident. Appreciating the severity of the incident, as you express here in your witness statement, did you consider the additional support would have been of assistance at this early stage of the response?
My thinking was still, as I described to you, and in recognising the seriousness of the incident, we do get calls on a number of incidents, including fires, which don't necessarily require our intervention or support. It was clear to me that this was not one of those fires, that this was one where an SCG would be called and that we would need to know more about what was going on and would need to communicate that and offer support.
Did you consider asking Miss Welch to remotely attend the SCG meeting at 5 and perhaps deploying the second duty officer to the SCC?
I didn't think of doing that because my main aim for the first SCG was to get an understanding of what was going on, to see what might be the next step. And certainly one of the next steps that might have been open to me if it looked like things were not in any sense under control would have been to escalate that further, ring Catherine Richardson, possibly bring in others and possibly think about deployment.
Can you assist us with when a GLOW was deployed to the SCC?
I can't, I'm afraid. It's when I was no longer on duty, so I'm not specifically sure when that did happen.
I'd like to ask you next about your communication with the wider RED team. In terms of information sharing, we can see here at CLG 3030446 an email that you sent. It's an email you sent at 5:55. It's CLG 3030446. That's right. It's an email that you sent at 5:55 to RED, Catherine Richardson, the department's executive team and minister's offices, providing details of the incident. Now, you were made aware of the fire at 3:30. Was this your first communication to the department's executive team and minister's office?
I believe it was. I can't be absolutely certain, but I believe it was.
Can you assist us with why there was, or was there any reason why you waited until 5:55 to email them?
No. Well, yes, gathering the information necessary. I was also making phone calls during this time, speaking obviously to the London Resilience Group and others, and considering what was the right information to put forward.
In this email, we can see, if we go down the page slightly, under issues for DCLG, it says the following. You wrote the following: fire policy is now a Home Officer responsibility. However, DCLG build regulation colleagues will have policy interest in this incident. Parallels are being drawn in the media to the fire at Lakanal House, Tower Block in Camberwell, London in 2009. These were the issues that were identified and highlighted to ministers and senior management at DCLG. Fire safety, focus on Lakanal. There was at no stage reference here to the recovery effort, was there?
No, at this stage, though we do look at recovery very early on, my focus was on ensuring that those colleagues who might need to contribute to any wider briefing or any understanding of the situation were flagged up. And I didn't at this point speak about recovery.
Can you assist us with why that was?
Well, these were the things that struck me at the time that needed focus. But in addition to these, you have evidence of phone calls that I made in the, I was going to say early morning, but it was slightly later early morning, so around about 8 o'clock, to building regulations colleagues, but also to building safety colleagues, but also to colleagues in housing, to put them on notice that this had happened and to give consideration. And that was our first step into what recovery might involve and might.
And we'll come on to those slightly later emails in a moment. But we can see here, if we 7 lines up from the bottom of the email, reference to 2 rest centres. Can you see that? If we go to the email at 6:13, please. So if we go up the page. Forgive me. If we go to CLG 3030447, it's the next in the sequence. There's an email here at 6:13 that we can see. And at the top, it's from Miss Welch to MHCLG Red at 6:13, and 7 lines up from the bottom of that. Can you see where it says 2 rest centres have been opened? Local authority LA, is that what LA stands for?
Yes.
Did not have their locations, and a further 3 premises have opened their doors to evacuees. Was this a concern at the time?
Actually, it was a very positive note at the time, the fact that rest centres were being opened, that there were other premises that were being made available. In the very beginning of an emergency, when evacuation is necessary, quite often what those responding, and particularly the police who are responsible for the cordon, what they do is they find an appropriate building in order to move people in, and that's what's called a survivor reception centre. And then as things move forward, then the designated rest centres, which the local authority will have in their area, will be opened up in order that people can come for longer term support. So this to me was a positive sign that people were on the ground, that they were making the arrangements that needed to be made. And though we didn't have the names of their locations, to be honest, in a first SCG, that's not uncommon, because that's a level of operational detail that we don't always have. We ask for it, and you'll see in the later report we do have that information, but that's often something that is not initially available.
Did you know that David Kerry, the contingency planning manager, who represented the RBKC at the SCG at 5 o'clock, did you know him from your work with the London Resilience Forum?
I don't think I knew him particularly well. I may well have met him at meetings. I do meet quite a lot of people at meetings, but I don't specifically remember.
I'd like to move on to your correspondence then with the Fire Duty Officer, David Norris. If we could go to CLG 408000, it's an email that we've seen before, but I'd like to take you to page 2 on this occasion. At 6:30, we can see here you emailed him.
Yes.
And you provide him the readout that had been circulated by Miss Welch of the 5 o'clock SCG, to which he responded asking you if we can go up to page 1 at the very bottom at 6:48. So if we go down to the bottom, we can see can you see that, the final email on the page,
Yes.
6:48?
Yes.
What would be your sense of CCS interest here, given sensitivities around London? Could they call a Cobra? And if we can see your response if we go up at 6:50. You say, not sure, maybe a Home Secretary-led meeting. I will ask CCS. Did you ask the CCS?
I suspect I did. I don't have any evidence one way or the other, and I don't actually recall at this point.
Can you recall who you spoke to within the CCS?
As I can't recall whether I did or not. So the main point of contact that I had within CCS during that night was Stuart Wainwright, and he and I did speak on several occasions, but whether it would have been him that I would have raised this with, I don't know.
You can't recall any details of the conversation with whether or not there was discussion about Cobra or a Home Office Secretary-led meeting?
No.
I'd like to move to an email next that you received from the office of Joe Farrer at 7:05. That's CLG 402860. And we can see at the middle of the page here at 7:05. It's the middle of page 2. The email at 7:05. Can you see that?
Yes.
And what is being asked here, well, what it says here is, thanks, Jill. I presume we will also be involved in any recovery issues. We are due to brief the Secretary of State as that
Yes.
this morning on another issue, but we can make sure he is updated as well. If we can then move on, well, let me ask you this whilst we're here at this email. I presume we will be involved in any recovery issues. What did you understand her to mean?
As lead government department for recovery on specifically issues to do with the built environment and those that involve local government, that's what I took it to mean in her inquiry, and certainly that's what I was responding to, that we were likely to be lead government department for that.
If we go up the page to the next email at 7:07, we can see your response. You say, yes, this will almost certainly be a local authority-led recovery. It may be obvious, but what did you mean by that?
Because it affected, as I say, it was within a city environment. It's local authority building, local authority tenants. The idea that it would be any other than the local authority leading on recovery is unlikely, and the local authority does lead on the majority, though not all, recoveries.
So you don't make any reference here to what involvement DCLG Red might have in the recovery phase, do you?
No.
So far as you were concerned at this stage, that it was solely down to the local authority. Is that a fair characterisation?
No, I didn't go into any detail about what it would be, but if it's a local authority-led recovery, we would have some involvement, either in RED in providing recovery liaison officers, which we do when there are recovery coordinating groups, or indeed for the department, given the fact that it's local authority and that's the departmental responsibility.
I'd like to go back to the department's emergency response plan, please. That's CLG 405657. And if we could go to page 41. Bottom of the page, under the heading Recovery Shift Change. It says this: running alongside the emergency response will be activity to return the local community to normality. This activity is known as recovery, and a local recovery working group will be established to start this work in train. Once the emergency response reaches a point where demands on the emergency services are becoming less intense, a local decision will be made to transfer responsibility for the incident from the strategic coordinating group to the recovery working group. You may well find that you, the GLT, will be required to attend initial recovery working group meetings. However, it is unwise for the same team to cover both response and recovery, and action should be taken to stand down the government liaison team and put alternative arrangements into place as soon as possible. Did you consider, given the fact response and recovery act in tandem, it might have been appropriate to identify what actions DCLG might be involved in the recovery phase?
We were still very much in the response phase at this point, and the consideration for us with regard to recovery was very much around the building regulations issues, or the building safety issues and housing issues, and those were ones that we picked up, that I picked up reasonably early that morning to engage with our policy colleagues around that.
What about DCLG needing to scale up its resources? Is that something that you considered?
Yes, absolutely. And that was why I was in communication fairly early that morning with Rob Mason, who was our emergency management team leader and set up the Ops Centre, to talk about setting up our operations centre, to widening the pool of people within RED who would be involved.
Well, we'll come to the operations centre in due course. I'd like to ask you this: who did you understand the lead government department to be at this stage?
This would still have been Home Office, because it was still a response to a fire.
How would RED's response differ in practice in an incident where it was the lead government department as opposed to an incident where it was not?
The main way that it would differ would be to have more policy colleagues from other parts of the department involved, feeding in information directly to the operations centre. In effect, this actually happened very, very quickly because of the nature of what the recovery was going to be for this. But certainly that would have been the situation when an operations centre was set up if we were lead. It wouldn't have affected the way we as RED and government liaison officers operated, because we would still have been doing the same job for our department that we would do for any other department in providing that link into government, because in that sense we work across government, not just for, as it was then, DCLG. I'd
like to ask you about a few further emails that you sent that morning. If we could go to CLG 3030443, page 1 at the bottom of the page, it's an email at 4:08. You say this at the end of the first line: we will need to put a note, assuming that means together, short form for together.
Yes.
At very least, and will need to include building regs colleagues, as I suspect there will be an investigation. CFRA, what does that stand for?
That's the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor.
Should be letting know HO
Home Office.
Home Office. No. Can you start jotting down details so we can start pulling notes together? Again, if we go two emails up at 4:33, we can see an email that you send, and the second sentence of which says this: I think we can wait until we have more from London, but I'm looking for building regs contacts so we can give them a heads up. You mention in your email at 5:55, and we've seen it before. I can take you to it again. It's CLG 402860, page 3. Under issues for DCLG, DCLG building regulation colleagues may have policy interest in this incident. And again at CLG 402860, trying to follow it as chronologically as possible, at 7:12, an email, the first in the chain. We can see here, I think our colleagues in building regs will need to be engaged. I have emailed Bob Leadsom, their DD, but what do you mean by DD? Is it?
That's Deputy Director, so the same level as Catherine.
But do not have mobile numbers, I'm assuming that means.
Yeah.
So hoping he will be in early in case policy lines are required from them. Next, CLG 3030453, please. And it's an email at 8:07. We can see you say here, you will have seen our updates on this incident. I would expect there will be requests for policy input from ourselves on the building regulations angle on this incident. And we can see the response at 8:11 here at CLG 402867 at page 2. Where the response from Brian Martin, it's the third paragraph. It's important for our ministers to understand that DCLG carries significant policy responsibilities for fire protection standards and for social housing. You respond to this email. It's the first email in the chain at the top there, confirming that comms are looped in. And again at CLG 3030455, we can see in the second part of that email, I'm looking for lines from building regs and housing colleagues. Perhaps understandably, there was the need to engage your housing colleagues and the building regulations and policy side of the department. But what would you say to the suggestion that your focus was more on building regulations at that time than questioning what the local authority was doing or having an eye to the recovery?
No, I would say that I was very much focused on what was happening at the incident. Clearly, there were considerations that would need to be taken into account by the department, and there would be briefing that was needed. And part of our role within RED and part of the operations centre role, which we were simulating in a very light touch way overnight, is to ensure that those policy areas that have any input to provide do provide that, and that any briefing that goes up to any of our ministers covers the full range of issues that might be there. So this was me setting in train some questions for others to cover, and that obviously developed later into both the very in-depth work that the department did on that side, and also the in-depth work that was done for housing as part of the recovery. But certainly for me, that was part of the role. But the key thing was what was happening on the ground, and was there any support that was needed there, or did it look like things were, as far as the response is concerned, moving in the right direction?
Well, We've seen here from about 5:55 in the morning to after 8 o'clock several emails that you sent. Would you accept that none of those emails contain any reference to the recovery phase?
As such, I was still concentrating on the response phase, so the SCG was still running. We were waiting for a readout from that to understand what more was happening, whether there was anything else required from us. And this was, as far as I was concerned, this was information that would be required as early as possible. And in a sense, when you're looking at this, looking at a response holistically, understanding what has happened and how this is affecting the area, and more broadly with regard to how it might affect other areas, is in essence how you move through the stages into recovery.
There isn't in these emails that I've taken you to any consideration or any evidence that there was consideration given to the local authority's ability to deal with the incident given its scale.
At this time, the information that was coming back through seemed that they seemed to be coping well, that they didn't seem to have problems, and that they had mutual aid that was being provided to them. And it wasn't, as you were saying, it wasn't until much later that I discovered that they had been turning down offers of mutual aid.
Had you spoken to anybody from the local authority?
It would not be our normal activity to speak to people from the local authority right in the middle of a response, because as Catherine commented in her email, people are very focused on what they're doing. If there had been help and support that they had required, certainly I would have been engaging with them about how we were providing that help or support. But that had not been asked for, hadn't been indicated. And so at this point, I would be more likely to be speaking to the London Resilience Group than to the local authority, just to gain an update.
Did you speak to the London Resilience Group?
We had done, but at this particular point, we knew that people were all in the SCG, which was the key focus, and they would have been supporting that. So at this point, no, I wasn't on the phone to them.
I'd like to ask you about those SCGs. We've discussed the first SCG took place at 5 o'clock, followed by an SCG at 6:30. You received the following request. I'll take you to it. CLG 40 802, forgive me. And if we can go to page 2, it's an email at 6:51. It's CLG 40 8002. If we could go to the email at 6:51, please. It should be on the middle of page 2. We can see here, can you see the email at 6:52? 6:51, forgive me.
Yes.
We can see there, it says the following. It's an email from Stuart Wainwright, who you mentioned was from the CCS, who you had contact with. Is that right?
Yes.
And here he's emailing you saying number 10 have requested an update by 7:45. Can you send through your latest understanding? If we can scroll up to page 1, you respond at 7:09, confirming it's in the first line there. The SCG is still running, but our most recent information from London Comms Call is as follows, and you set out a readout there. Could I take you next to CLG 30 18772, please? We can see here an email at 8:40 you circulated a readout from the 6:30 SCG to CCS, Red, and the Home Office, and in that, in the first line, you say, please read the readout from 6:30 SCG, Glow currently in 8:30 SCG. So we will provide further information following that meeting. So you were sending an update from the 6:30 SCG at the time that the 8:30 SCG was already underway, is that right?
Yes.
Now, this incident was fast-moving and the pace of information sharing was important, wasn't it?
Yes.
The consequence of the readout of the 6:30 SCG not being circulated by the time the next one had begun meant that there was a delay, wasn't there?
It meant that it was slower than I would have liked, yes.
Was there any reason for this?
The SCG meeting was quite long-running. Denise then needed to bring the notes that she had made into a shape that she could share, and she did that just prior to the next meeting, which she then passed on to me. I checked it through and to make sure that it read okay, that people would understand it, and then forwarded it on.
Let's go to CLG 309725. This is your witness statement, your first witness statement, paragraph 44, please. And we can see here at paragraph 44, you say, at 7:51 p.m. I signed off and my role as duty head of resilience was taken by Kate Head to ensure I got rest overnight. Have you since reflected on that, and is there any correction you want to make?
I was asked about this, and the only email evidence we have is that it was actually Joe Gillespie who took over that role, and the timing wasn't quite clear, so it suggested that was 17:51. To be perfectly honest, it's really difficult to know, because in my mind Kate did take that role on, but there is no specific evidence, and the evidence we have suggests this.
And so the point there being that you were on duty, you were still working at 7:51 on the 14th of June, is that right?
Yes.
I'd just like to take you to paragraph 40, just up the page of your statement. It's just the first sentence of paragraph 40, which says this. I asked my job share, Lynn Dowdican, to take over as response manager, which she did at 9:30. Can I just clarify that you don't mean that you went off duty and then came back on duty sometime later, that you just handed over your role?
Right, so if I can clarify, obviously overnight I had been doing all of this role from home. At this point I handed over the response manager bit, so I've got two roles going on. I've got the response manager role, but I'm also still head of resilience for duty. So at this point I've handed the response manager role to Lynn Dowdican, so she's taking forward the response. I still had the head of resilience for duty, so if another incident had occurred, I would still be responsible for that. But during this time, I then was not doing any other work to do with the response. I was getting dressed and getting ready to come into the office, and then came into the office to work, as far as I recall. And then I think I go on to give evidence about various other things that I did that day, which were supportive of the response, but not in a response manager role.
Well, could I take you to CLG 408026 and take you to page 3, please? We can see here an email, I believe it's the second email on the page, 10:41 is the time of the email. It says here, readout of 8:30 London SCG, circulated from Denise Welch, 14th of June, 10:41 to MHCLG read. Were you aware that the readout of this meeting, the 8:30 SCG, was only being circulated to read at 10:41?
I stepped away from this particular part of the role by then, so I wasn't aware of what was happening around that. In fact, at that time, I suspect I was probably travelling into the office, but I'm not exactly sure on timings.
Would you accept that's quite a considerable delay?
It is a long time from the start of the meeting, but what I don't know is how lengthy that meeting was or how much detail there was to transcribe.
Could I take you to CLG 408026? Oh, forgive me, it's the same document, page 2. It's the last email on the page. (11:10), we can see here that the 8:30 SCG readout is then circulated at the bottom of page 2 to Catherine Hammond of the CCS, to Stuart Wainwright of the CCS, to Red, and so on and so forth. Do you know why there was a reason for the delay in circulating this to the CCS at 11:10?
No, I can't give you any insight into that, I'm afraid.
Do you consider, Ms McManus, that Red fell short here in communicating information to the CCS promptly?
We were keeping CCS well informed in general terms, as you'll have seen, for instance, where I didn't have SCG readouts. We provided the comms readouts. I would say that the timings here do look a little lengthy. It may well be that they had other communications ahead of this, but I really can't comment, so I don't know at this point.
You would accept that Red was the conduit, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was designed to inform central government, CCS, of what was happening on the ground, wasn't it?
Indeed, yes.
I'd like to take you to your first witness statement, page 10, paragraph 36, please. And we can see there it's 6 lines down from the top of paragraph 36. You say, usually other government departments are not involved in SCGs, as it is Red's role to represent the whole of government at these meetings and make sure everyone who needs to see the information is getting it. However, due to the nature of the incident and the need to communicate key lines at extremely short notice to the ministerial meeting on the Grenfell Tower fire, it was agreed that CCS could listen in to SCGs that day to expedite their receiving of information for the commonly recognised information picture known as CRIP. We can see, if I can take you to it, CLG 408026, so back to the email that we were just looking at page 2, and this time to the email at 11:43, please. We can see here an email from CCS to MHCLG Red. Hi, I'm looking to dial into the SCG meeting at 2 today, not to say anything, but to make sure we have the most up-to-date information to go in the CRIP, which will be issued in advance of the 4 o'clock ministerial. We can go up the chain to the final email on page 1, which is sent from you at 12:50. And it says this: Lynn, are we really fine with this? Can we not give a readout in time? Just a thought. And then going up to the email at 13:24, you again emailing Lynn Dowdicon, your colleague. Hi Lynn, we could send the numbers, I'm assuming that means, the numbers through without waiting for full readout. Phase report back from Mass Fats Group, is that the Mass Fatalities Group?
It is, yes.
It gives them good basic numbers for their draft. As Sunny has confirmed, a bit difficult and possibly unnecessary to say no, but very unusual exclamation mark. Was it, as you say in your email here, unusual for the CCS to request to listen into those SCG meetings?
In my experience, yes.
Has that ever happened before, to your knowledge?
I think it has on one or two occasions, but I couldn't give you specifics.
Do you consider that the delay in RED circulating information from the SCGs played a part in the CCS wishing to listen into those SCGs?
I think they had some very crucial deadlines, and obviously they were concerned to make sure that they got that information. As you can see from my emails, I suggested some alternatives that might also be helpful, but it was agreed that was the right way to go.
The exclamation marks at the end of line 2 suggest that you didn't entirely approve of what was being suggested. Is that right?
It would have been my view, and it is still my view, that we ought to be able to provide them with information in a timely fashion, and it's not something that we do. But the key thing, and as I said at this point, the important thing is getting the information through, and if that's one way of doing it, then that's fine.
I'd like to ask you about something you say in your witness statement. It's your first witness statement at paragraph 37, please. That's page 10. You say this: from these early SCG readouts and information coming in from BBC 24-hour news, I was getting the impression that the response was properly coordinated. I was not picking up any problems. It was still a live incident with the fire still going on, and so the focus was on what the fire and rescue service was doing. You go on onto the next page at paragraph 38 to say this: RED mainly relies on information coming from SCGs and follow-up discussions with local responders. Whilst it was not RED's role to monitor the news or social media, I felt it would be useful to gather additional information about the ongoing situation by keeping an eye on media reports. Can I just understand what you're saying here? Were you given the impression that the response was properly coordinated by the local authority because there were no reports otherwise? Or was it that you saw positive reports on the response in those early hours of the 14th of June?
There was nothing that I was seeing that was suggesting that the key issues that the local authority would deal with were not being dealt with. And given that we positively ask in the SCGs if there is any help and support that's required, and we weren't being told that there was, those are the things that I was taking as being positive and that things were on track.
So the absence of anything negative equated to a positive, is that, have I understood you correctly?
The absence of anything negative in the media, but no request following what would be our usual approach in the SCG. Is there any help that's required? Which is, it's a general offer to everybody around the SCG table, not specifically just to the local authority, and that's the kind of thing that we monitor. And as you will have seen from CCS, they were very keen to know whether anybody, particularly from fire, police and ambulance, were asking, but local authority is amongst that as well. So sorry, that was a long way of saying negative from the media, but from positive interaction in the SCG.
Well, would you agree here that your sources of information, one being the SCG readouts, the other being BBC News reports, was an insufficient way for RED, the Resilience and Emergencies Division of DCLG, to have been gaining situational awareness? Those
through the SCG is our usual and normal way of gaining situational awareness. We have developed that more recently, but that is to take into account things like media reporting and things like that, which is done through our situational awareness group. But that wasn't how we did that at the time. But the SCG definitely is our our main form of information.
And by this point, there had still not been a GLOW deployed to the Strategic Coordination Centre, was there?
No, but we had a GLOW deployed remotely, and that, as I say, that is quite common practice.
Remotely, but unable to assess the situation or speak to others outside of the SCG?
Yes, in terms of not being at the SCC and engaging, but that has to be put in perspective that that engagement isn't necessarily always available at the SCC either. But in this case, you're right. It was only over the phone. She wasn't there in person.
Can you help us with what RED was doing to speak directly to the local authority at this stage?
I've explained already that we wouldn't at this stage have been ringing the local authority direct.
I'd like to move on, please, to ask you about the emergency notice. In your first witness statement, please, I'll take you to page 11, paragraph 41. You say the following: the official emergency notice was put out at 8:39. This puts the rest of the department and wider government on notice that matters might be escalated and red reserves might need to be brought in. Red reserves are people who work in other parts of the department who can be released to work on urgent red projects. I can take you to an email here at CLG 402875, please, and at page 2. The bottom of page 2, we can see an email here from Catherine Richardson at 9:18 to you saying, Jill, can you put out an emergency notice before you hand over? Do you have access to the shared drive, CCing Kate and Joe in case not? Then going up on the bottom of page 1 at 9:25, we can see an email from your colleague Kate Head. Was she also a resilience advisor within RED?
She was the head of resilience.
I'm grateful. And she says this, she sends the email to you as well as Catherine Richardson and CC's in Joe Gillespie. Are we expecting a RED response that requires a full operations centre? Is that what OPSI stands for?
Yes.
And ongoing work passed today for this incident. I asked to understand whether we need to issue an EN emergency notice at this point. Is that right?
Yes, it is emergency notice.
Did you consider that RED's response would have been over in a day? Or is that what you understand Miss Head to be saying here?
I think she just wanted to get a full feeling for whether it would be a full operations centre with all the things that involves, and you looked at the schematic to see what that involved, or maybe a lesser operations centre which we could have contained within RED and therefore not requiring the emergency notice. And as she hadn't been on duty overnight, she hadn't seen the full extent of what we were talking about.
You had, and you respond, we can go up and see your response at 9:32. You say this: difficult to know at moment, maybe more about wider departmental issues, but Rob, is that Rob Mason?
It is.
Felt an OPSI operations centre felt right. I've asked Lynn to be response manager for now. Faye is taking on GLOW for now. We will let her have battle rhythm if there is one. Was it the case that you were unclear, as this email suggests, that a full operations centre was required on the morning of the 14th of June?
The thought that was in my mind was whether this would actually be a response that would be continuing, or whether it would be a recovery that would be continuing, and what the structure might be for that. I rang Rob Mason, who has been head of EMT since, I think, November 2011, to ask his advice on this. And we both came to the conclusion that actually it was sensible to set up an operations centre and have the full facility there, on the basis that if that then for some reason wasn't required, it is much easier to move back from that, but it made sense to do that.
Oh, you refer in your email to, again, wider departmental issues. Does this refer to the building regulation side again?
And housing.
And housing. You had received, had you not, the SCG minutes, the readouts of those SCG meetings?
The first two, yes.
You had seen the BBC news reporting, as you mentioned in your witness statement of the incident, is that right?
Yes.
You yourself acknowledged in your witness statement that this was a serious incident, is that right?
Yes.
You must have at this stage appreciated, or in fact you didn't, that there would be significant involvement from the department, DCLG, who was to lead as lead government department in that response, in the recovery phase, forgive me.
In the recovery phase, and I think that's the key to this here, because particularly with the departmental issues, moving over to that, whilst we can still run an operations centre to support, it's a much wider mechanism, as you will have seen from all of the other witnesses that you have been talking to from the department. It became something much bigger in recovery, and the Grenfell team grew from that.
What about the assistance that central government might need to provide to those affected?
As part of the recovery, yes, that would all be taken into account.
I'd like to take you to the actual emergency notice, which we can see at CLG 402876, please. We can see here an email sent by DCLG Red at 9:39, subject emergency notice. Good morning all, please see the attached emergency notice regarding the Grenfell Tower fire. You say in your witness statement that you believed the emergency notice to have been issued at 8:39. You would accept that, I think there was a timestamp issue, but in fact it was sent at 9:39, is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you assist us, please, with why 3 SCGs had by now been convened and only then an emergency notice was sent out?
The timing of it was when those that were coming in to set up the operations centre were available to do that. It is a decision for Catherine as to when that goes out, and obviously, as you've seen from the email, she asked for that to be issued.
Could I take you to next the actual emergency notice, which we'll find at CLG 408012. This is the Resilience and Emergencies Division Emergency Notice 1217. It says here in the first paragraph, in accordance with the Department's emergency response plan, with effect from 8 o'clock on the 14th of June 2017, Resilience and Emergencies Division has activated an Operations Centre Red Control to coordinate the response to Grenfell Tower fire. We know, because we've just seen, that in fact the Operations Centre hadn't been set up at 8 o'clock, had it?
The initial part of it, Rob Mason was in the process of setting it up, but I couldn't give you the exact timing on that.
Well, let's go back to your emergency response plan, please. That's CLG 405657. And if we can go to page 54, it's a schematic that we saw before. We can see there issue emergency warning in orange, and then issue an emergency notice in red, and then you can follow the arrow, which leads to activate operations centre. Is it right that when an emergency notice is issued, that's when the operations centre is activated?
No, this is very much a schematic. They aren't interdependent. This is the way that we notify others that it's happening, but the actual activity of calling people in, getting people set into their roles isn't dependent on the emergency notice being issued. So these would have been happening independently of each other.
Well, could I take you back then to CLG 402875, please? At the top of page 1. This is an email sent at 9:32 by you, where you say, and I've read it before and I'll read it again, difficult to know at the moment, maybe more about wider departmental issues, but Rob felt and OPSI felt right. Would you agree that it sounds here as if there was still some discussion about whether or not an operations centre would be set up?
At this time, at 9:32, my understanding is that Rob Mason had already started setting one up. Whether it would continue might have been more to the point whether that would be sensible to keep it going, but he had already started that, and in fact handed over the initial work that he'd done to Linda Adkin when she became available.
Could I take you back to that emergency notice, please? That's CLG 408012. And we can see here under Operations Centre Senior Staff, the response director accountable for overall strategy is Catherine Richardson, that was the deputy director. The response manager accountable for the operational management of DCLG's response is Robert Mason. Robert Mason wasn't on duty that day, was he?
He wasn't due to be on duty that day. By dint of the fact of his experience and the fact that he was my line manager when I was in EMT before I took temporary promotion, he was the person that I rang for advice. He took the decision that he would work for that period, set things up and then hand them over. So he wasn't on duty for the rest of the day.
Would you have expected an emergency notice to name a response manager who was not on duty?
I understand that the intention here was that this would indicate who the response manager would be ongoing, and this is a role that Rob Mason usually took, but I didn't draft it, so I can't comment any further than that.
I'd like to turn to communications by you on the evening of the 14th of June, please, at 6:04 that evening. If I can take you to CLG 402999. We can see here an email at 6:04 from you to Catherine Richardson. Possible speaking note for 6:15 call. Speaking note, and then you go on to say, the fourth line down, heartened by a response from London councils who are looking to support Kensington and Chelsea with offers of accommodation. We can see the subject matter was an urgent briefing request. Did this relate to the Secretary of State call with the Mayor of London at 6:15?
Yes, it did.
You say heartened by the response from London councils who are looking to support Kensington and Chelsea with offers of accommodation. Where did this information come from?
From my understanding, and further down the email chains, I think you can see that I had asked the London Resilience Group for input so that we could understand what lines might be helpful. And I would believe that particular line certainly is likely to be a line provided by them.
Well, looking down, we don't see that email between you and the London Resilience Group about numbers. But this related to the call between the Secretary of State and the Mayor of London. Were you aware of any concerns that were expressed in that meeting regarding the local authority response by the Secretary of State or the Mayor?
No, I didn't take part in the meeting itself. I was just doing the pre-briefing.
Would you have expected information of that nature, that there was concern about a local authority's response, to have been information that was fed back to Red?
Yes, that's something. If there's something that might affect the response that we as the conduit into government could support on, then we would expect to see that.
I'd like to move on, please, to the 15th of June, so moving on in time. On the 15th of June, you had time off that day, but did do some tasks later in the day. If we could go to, please, CLG 3020191. It's an email at 3:10 from you to the BEC, that's the RBKC BEC. And it confirms in the first sentence there, I have just spoken to Stuart Priestley. Were you aware that he was the Council Silver responsible for the operational response at that time?
I expect that I did, and that would have been why I might have contacted him. I can't recall at this distance.
Can you assist us with why it was that you contacted him?
Because the support being offered by the post office was by way of providing a local branch which could be opened to provide funding to those who had been evacuated. And it was obviously funding for the local community was something which Kensington and Chelsea were dealing with direct, and it made sense to join them together.
Did you discuss anything else with Mr. Priestley?
Not that I recall.
Did you ask him how the local authority was coping?
I don't recall doing that, and that kind of general situational awareness isn't something that I would necessarily have been gathering at that point, but I don't remember I might have asked him how things were going, how he was doing, but I don't recall.
Do you not consider how a local authority was dealing on the second day of a response to ask them how they were doing would be good situational information for Red to obtain?
As I say, I don't recall quite what I did say to him or what information passed apart from this about the post office, and the situational awareness side of things was being dealt with by another part of the operations centre, so direct stuff coming in from the SCG.
Was there any wider discussion about the need for help or offers of support that Mr. Priestley may need or was receiving?
I don't recall.
I'd like to move on then, please, to events on the 16th of June. What role were you fulfilling that day?
On the 16th of June, which was the Saturday, just working through my day.
On the Friday.
On the Friday. On the Friday, I was doing some general work in support of the response, more specifically around the briefing side of things, and some other work that those who were involved in the response were not able to take forward.
You say in your statement, I can take you to it if you want to be referred to it, but that around 11 o'clock, Robert Mason asked you over the phone to recommend an effective strategic leader to head up the recovery work, and you suggested John Barradell. You then sent a follow-up email, which we can see here, CLG 3030504. Is that what this email that you sent to Robert Mason at 11:37 was about?
Yes.
Can you give us any context to this request by Mr. Mason for an effective strategic leader?
I wasn't given any specific context. It was literally a phone call about, could I think of anybody who might be appropriate for this role? I wasn't given any background into the discussions, and it was only later that I discovered what had led to those discussions.
Right, so you didn't ask him, why are you asking me for names for a strategic leader?
I asked what sort of context and what sort of skills they were looking for, but I didn't ask specifically why. It was clear from the phone call that what was needed was some information quite quickly rather than a discussion.
Well, forgive me, how were you able to suggest names if you didn't understand the context of what those names would be being put forward for?
Because he did ask specifically someone strategic who could lead a recovery of this nature. I mean, it was obvious from the discussion that he was referring to the recovery in London rather than anything else. So that was obvious, and hence the names that I suggested. But the context of how that came about, he didn't give me, and I didn't ask about that specifically.
But your understanding was that it was for somebody to lead a recovery?
In London, yes.
Why did you suggest Mr. Baradell?
He is somebody who I have worked with before. I am aware of the roles he's undertaken, and I knew of his effectiveness as a leader in London, and he seemed a sensible choice.
At the time, were you aware that the London Local Authority Gold Resolution had been triggered the evening before, and its formal activation was anticipated on the 16th?
No, I didn't at that time.
What do you think about RED's situational awareness at the time, considering you were proposing someone to provide expertise who was already down at the town hall providing support?
From looking at the information that's come from this, the role that was being suggested was slightly different to the role that he has, and I know that there's been some discussion already about the difference between the role that he originally took and the one that he finally took, and that would be my understanding, because it is significantly different to normal gold arrangements.
And was the fact that Mr. Mason was asking you for names in the first place unusual?
Yes.
Would you have expected something as significant as Mr. Baradell being involved, or the mutual aid agreements being activated at the end of the 15th of June, would be something communicated to RED?
I would have thought that in general terms, yes, those items would have been. I don't know that they weren't in general terms, because, as I say, what was being discussed on the Friday morning was significantly different to what had been set up on the Thursday night.
So what was your understanding of what had been set up on Thursday night?
I didn't. I wasn't working in the operations centre on Thursday night, so my situation awareness might not have been that focused, but it doesn't mean that RED's wasn't.
And what was your understanding of Friday morning then?
It was clear that they were looking for someone who could come in and take a grip of what was going to be likely to be an extensive recovery, someone who had good resilience and management and leadership skills, and that's why I gave the names that I did.
I'd like to take you to an email. It's CLG 408439, please. Page 1, an email you circulated at 2:49 on the 16th of June. And if we go down at page 2, we can see other issues. Can you see that?
Yes.
And it says here, Government Liaison Officer, GLO, raised Minister's concerns following visits to the scene, including local authority coordination, victims' access to cash, distribution of donations, information available to residents, availability of counselling services. GLO reminded SCGs of government offer of help and support to all multi-agency partners. Contact and requests can be made direct to GLO or through Red Control email. Reading page 2 here, it appears that these were concerns of the Minister after attending the scene that morning. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
In the minutes of that SCG, which we can see at MOL 6036, page 3, under DCLG, it says, at 1:30 a further cross-governmental meeting will take place chaired by Nick Hurd, specifically on local authority issues. The Secretary of State has a number of concerns. These involve access to cash, donations and information for the survivors. Would you accept that this is the first time at any one of these SCG meetings since the incident, since the SCG started, that records of concerns expressed by DCLG are noted?
I couldn't confirm definitely on that because I haven't looked through the minutes of the other SCGs.
I can certainly take you to them, but it might be more expeditious for me to ask this. Would you accept that having looked at those earlier SCG minutes, there are no records of concerns raised by the GLO in those SCG meetings?
I'm happy to take that as confirmation then, in which case my answer would be yes, I think, to the original question.
Would you accept that it was the role of the Government Liaison Officer who was present at those SCGs to report back to the SCG any concerns that the department may be having?
Yes. And can I just caveat that slightly? Report back to the SCG and also potentially raise with the any of the partners specifically.
And just very briefly, whilst we have this document in front of us, we can see at the, forgive me, not this document, if we could just go back to CLG 408439, the email that we were looking at before that you circulated, we can see the email was sent at 2:49, and it says the first line of the email, for completeness, this is on page 1, please see below the key issues raised at the 11 o'clock SCG. Why had the speed of information sharing had not improved by this time?
I don't think I can comment on that at this point. I don't have anything that I could identify for you.
Ms McManus, in your view, how was the operations centre functioning at this time?
It did seem to be functioning well. Certainly there was information that was passing through, and indeed it was our Government Liaison Officer who was one of the first to pick up, along with the SCG Chair, on issues centrally. And I know these were reported back to Catherine Richardson, and I believe she refers to those in her statement as well.
Mr Chairman, would that be a convenient moment for a break?
Yes, it would. Thank you very much. Well, I think we ought to have a break now so we can all get some lunch. We'll stop there, Ms McManus, and we'll resume, please, at 2 o'clock. And as I said before, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence when you're out of the room. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you go to the usher, please? Thank you very much. 2 o'clock then, please.